My name is Gary Hayslip. I'm the Deputy Director of IT and the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of San Diego, California. When I got here about 3 years ago, the IT department was still, I kind of look at it, was still in the dark ages. As we started getting into it, lo and behold, you can't replace software anymore, like going down the fries and buying something. Predominantly a lot of the enterprise software is now some type of SaaS solution. And so I actually had to write policy on cloud. And I actually had to brief the procurement specialists and everything about these are certain things that are going to have to be in contracts now if we're purchasing cloud services. For us, it's just become kind of commonplace. We know we're going to be dealing with something with cloud, which then brings us into the next piece about security. Is really understanding, okay, if we're using cloud, do we understand the security issues with it? And not be afraid of it. Let's just understand what we're dealing with here, the risk associated with it. Let's incorporate it into our workflows and our policies so that we can actually leverage it. One of the first things I did was I actually had to go out into my departments. I had to go out and meet people to be able to go ahead and have my departments actually trust us as partners. When I first got here, they had no idea what a CISO was. They really didn't even understand what cyber was. One of the things I needed to really find out was what applications are important to them. What data is important to them? What data do they create? What issues are they having? Some of the things I found, they had found workarounds. They had found, all the shadow IT that people talk about. And from a security perspective, you need to know about these things because a lot of these things are honestly going to turn into projects. They're going to turn into projects that later on you're going to have to assess risk on, or later on you need to know about them. So I needed to get out and talk to people and find out what was going on in the departments. And doing that, I did one of the core things that I've learned here in a city environment, and it's about relationships. You have to meet people so they understand that you care, that you actually give a crap, and that you will be out there and work with them, and you understand their issues, and that you're going to help them succeed. Then from that, we progressed to, I started looking at the old assessments, on the network and issues that they had. I started building out and actually doing inventory. What do I have? What I found just blew my mind. And the biggest thing I've learned from city networks is that it's very hard to establish a baseline because the fact that they're constantly in flux. They're constantly doing updates, things are being changed, new technologies are being brought in. So you can kind of assess where you're at, but it's always on the go. There's always movement, there's always change, which kind of scares you from a risk perspective. But I also realize too that I don't have a perimeter, that my perimeter honestly is now on people's mobile devices. It's on people's laptops. It's kind of amorphous in a way. What you have to be comfortable with here in a city is that you're not going to have that control. And so to deal with the fact that you're not going to have that kind of control, you have to have visibility. You have to have solutions in place to where you understand your data flows, and you have to constantly be, scanning and remediating and monitoring. It doesn't stop because of the fact that you don't have a baseline. And then that's where we brought in Netskope, because I just wasn't concerned about on-prem. I wanted to look at the cloud. I know I've got users that are moving stuff, off, whether it's they just want to be able to work from home, so they throw stuff up on their Dropbox account. We knew cloud was, another perspective that we had to look at how data was being used. And so we brought in Netskope to go ahead and run so we could start auditing. I wanted to be able to go ahead and see where things were going, and I wanted to go ahead and honestly start that discussion. I knew from the 40 departments that I have, everybody was using cloud for one thing or another for moving data around, and almost all of them are going to probably have some type of a business reason as to why they're doing it. But, now that we're huge Office 365, clients, we've got, OneDrive. OneDrive for business. I can't just go ahead and mandate this is what we're going to use. I need to start that discussion, kind of herd all the cats, bring everybody in so we can start looking at the issues. They can start looking at the security and risk issues associated with just throwing things up in the cloud. A lot of the departments probably don't even realize the magnitude of how much data is being moved. And that's the reason why we were looking at Netskope, was to give us visibility, from the cloud perspective. So all of these different tools, we're looking at what users are doing, what our third party partners are doing, where data's at on-prem, where data's at in the cloud, being able to audit it for the full life cycle of that data, and then from there, and actually putting policy together as to, okay, this is what we're going to allow, this is what we're going to block. How I ended up selecting Netskope was, it was actually kind of interesting. We're Gartner partners. We actually have Gartner in here, and so I have my own Gartner rep, and I do a lot of research with them. At the time when I realized I needed a tool to help me start hunting and really start taking a look from an audit perspective in cloud and seeing data that was leaving and being able to actually not just seeing data leaving, but being able to understand all the different cloud apps that were being used and which ones were risky and which ones were stable, per se, and which ones we should allow. There really wasn't a lot of solutions out there. There's a lot of people that said they could do it and they're doing certain things, but I wanted something that, from a platform perspective, would enable me to audit from the user account all the way, and the data, the actual file that they touched, all the way out to the cloud, where they were going, and I wanted to know some risk scores and stuff like that as to who they're going to, and is that a good company, and should we go ahead and block them. And so on Gartner, when I was doing a lot of research and I started talking to people that were already having these conversations with their executive staffs, I kept on hearing Netskope come up quite a lot. When I talk to a lot of CISOs, when we get together at different events and for dinners, and we discuss, and usually somebody will ask that question, hey, how are you dealing with cloud? How are you finding out what your users are doing? And I tell them, what we're doing with Netskope, and I recommend that they should check it out.